All right, everyone. This week we're going to be discussing community interactions. And so last week we were talking about population growth, limits to population growth, things like density dependent and density independent factors. We also had exponential and logistic growth curves. And I don't have it on here, but we had like a more realistic growth curve where it would sort of explode up and then there'd be a major die off and then things would sort of approach and then move relatively around the carrying capacity of that population within a particular ecosystem. Remember, the carrying capacity is the average that a particular ecosystem can handle. So it's the average number of individuals that can live in an ecosystem at a given time. That is the carrying capacity. If this all sounds alien to you, please go check out last week's stuff. So this is sort of an outline of today's lecture. This is, again, interspecific interactions. So this is between two different species. You have competition, predation, and predation can be broken down into herbivory or carnivory. So, herbivory would be like a sheep eating grass. Carnivory would be like the mountain lion eating the sheep, or whatever the case may be. Then we have the idea of symbiosis, which is parasitism, mutualism, and commensalism, and we're going to talk about all of these. So last week, we were talking about intraspecific interactions. Remember, population growth. We didn't hit all of those, and we'll probably circle back around later on in the semester. But intraspecific interaction, for instance, these two flamingos duking it out. Intraspecific is two individuals of the same species. Let me say that again. Intraspecific is two individuals of the same species. And that's contrasted with interspecific interactions. Interspecific, which is two individuals of, I can't make this work out right. Interspecific is two individuals of different species. So for instance, you have a fox here eating a flamingo. Two different species interacting with one another. Interspecific. So there we go. So again, these are community interactions. Remember, the basic unit of biology, the basic unit of biology is a cell. And that cell can be an individual. Okay? A group of individuals of the same species is a population. Okay? So let's say you have a cell, or let's say you have a multicellular organism. You have a bunch of humans all living in the same area. That is a population of humans. If you look at all of the species living in a particular area, that forms the community. So like the area where you live, let's say in your house, the community of your house is you and your cats or dogs or fish, and it includes your parents, and it might include the house plants. It is all of the populations of organisms living in a particular area. So we're talking about the way that these different organisms, the way that these different species living in the same area can interact with one another. And the first is competition. You guys probably all have like a reference. You have some mental idea of what competition means to you. And in nature, here's a good example, the hyena and the lion. In nature, both species do worse because of competition. And I've had economics majors sort of argue this point with me about business or whatever, but that doesn't matter. The thing that you should know is that in competition, both species do worse. Like, imagine that you're living with a group of lions on the savannah, and you manage to take down a gazelle or whatever it happens to be. What's going to be easier for you? Eating the gazelle, or eating the gazelle while having to fend off hyenas? Right? So competition, both groups are doing worse. Predation, as in this example here, where you have this mantid eating this bug. One species is doing better, the mantid gets a meal, and one is doing worse, the bug gets to get eaten, right? So mantid does better, we'll call that a plus. The bug does much worse, we'll call that a minus. The next example here is mutualism. Not the next example, but the next type of interspecific interaction, the next type of community interaction we can have is a mutualism. So you have a shark here swimming around with its remoras, which are attached to the underside of the shark. And the shark gets to have parasites eaten off of it. It gets to be cleaner and more comfortable. The remora not only get a meal out of it by eating the parasites, they also get a degree of protection from the shark, and the shark's not going to eat them, okay? So in a mutualism, it is plus plus. Both species are benefiting from this particular kind of interaction. The next thing we have is a commensalism, and commensalisms are, I wouldn't say controversial, but some folks don't think commensalism necessarily is a thing, or if it is a thing, it doesn't happen very often in nature, but that's neither here nor there, because in a commensalism, one species benefits and the other species doesn't really care. It neither benefits and it's not detracted from in any way. So the example, this is sort of like the most common example, would be these cattle egrets. This might be a different species because it's near a zebra, but it's these birds that hang out near these large animals, and basically the large animals, as they're moving through and eating the grass, cause bugs to get kicked up, and the egrets get to eat some bugs. They're not eating enough bugs to decrease their bug population in any way, and so the zebras don't really mind. So this is a plus and just a zero. So one organism benefits and the other is just kind of, whatever, that's cool. These three, predation, mutualism, and commensalism, are often referred to as symbiosis, okay? I'm probably not going to focus on that. I don't really care about that specifically. I just want you to know that term, because a lot of people associate symbiosis with just mutualism. They just say, oh, you're symbiotic, both species are benefiting, but symbiosis actually is referring to predation, mutualism, and commensalism as well. So in the next lecture, we're going to talk about the competitive exclusion principle, which you guys read about with the barnacles. We're going to talk about how organisms can help to deal with that by utilizing this notion of resource partitioning. And we're also, maybe in the next lecture, maybe the one after, we're going to be talking about coevolution, which is super awesome and fun.